Welcome to the Oracle's Rest, a place where stories unfold slowly, where time softens, and where the mind is free to wander. Tonight, we follow a different kind of story, not a journey across the sea, not a war between nations, but a life, one shaped not by a single event, but by a series of trials, each one seemingly impossible, and yet endured. This is the story of Hercules, but not as a figure of strength alone, not as a symbol of power, but as something quieter, a man who continues, even after everything has broken, before the labors, before the trials, before the tasks that would define him. There was something else, a beginning that did not resemble what would come, because Hercules was not born into peace. He was born into tension, into something already unresolved. His father was Zeus, king of the gods, a figure whose actions often shaped the lives of others, not always with intention, but with consequence. And his mother was mortal, Alcmen, and this alone created something unstable, because where Zeus moved, there was always another presence. Hera, queen of the gods, not distant, not unaware, but present. And what she saw was not simply a child, but a reminder of something she had not chosen, something she had not accepted. And this is where the story begins to take shape, because Hera does not forget, she does not ignore. She responds, not immediately, but with patience, with timing, because what unfolds next does not happen all at once. It unfolds over time. There is a moment early in Hercules' life where the tension becomes visible, not as conflict between gods, but as something placed directly into his world. Two serpents, sent, not loudly, not with warning, but quietly, into the space where he slept. And this moment, though small in scale, reveals something essential, because while other children would have been defenseless, Hercules, even then, was not. He reaches, not with fear, but with instinct, and the serpents do not survive, and this is often remembered as the first sign of what he would become. But it is also something else. It is the first indication that his life will not unfold normally, that what comes to him will not be proportionate or balanced or fair. As he grows, there are attempts to shape him, to guide him, to bring structure to something that resists it. He is taught, trained, given instruction in music, in discipline, in the kinds of skills that allow a person to exist within society. But even here, there is imbalance, because strength without restraint does not always align. And there is a moment where this becomes clear. His teacher corrects him, not harshly, not unjustly, but enough. And Hercules responds not with control, but with force. And the result is irreversible. And this is where something begins. Not yet the trials, not yet the labors, but the pattern, because what we begin to see is that Hercules is not only shaped by what happens to him, but by how he responds. And those responses carry consequence. There are periods of calm, moments where life seems to stabilize. He marries, he has children. He builds something that resembles a normal life, a structure, a place, a sense of belonging. And for a time, it holds. And this is important because it shows that what comes next is not inevitable. It is not constant. It is interruption, because Hera has not finished, and what she sends next is not external. It is internal madness, not visible at first, not announced, but moving quietly into the mind, altering perception, shifting reality. And in that altered state, Hercules acts not as himself, but as something else. And when the moment passes, when clarity returns, the reality is already set. His family gone, not through battle, not through accident, but through his own hands. And this is the turning point, because from this moment forward, the story is no longer about strength. It is about what comes after, what follows. When something cannot be undone, when there is no reversal, no way to return to what was, only the question of what now. Hercules seeks guidance, not from those around him, but from something beyond. The oracle at Delphi, a place where answers are not given easily, but where direction can be found, and what he is given is not relief, not forgiveness, but instruction. He must serve King Eurystheus and complete a series of labors, not one, not two, but many, each one designed not to test him, but to contain him, to direct something that otherwise has no boundary. And this is where the story truly begins. Because these labors are not random, they are structured, they are deliberate, they are meant to be impossible, and yet he accepts, not because he believes he will succeed, but because there is nothing else to do. Because when something cannot be undone, the only movement left is forward, and the first task awaits. And so, after the moment that could not be undone, after the loss that reshaped everything that came before it, Hercules does not begin his labors immediately, because even movement forward does not begin without pause. There is a period, not defined clearly in time, but felt, where action is not possible, where understanding has not yet settled, where the weight of what has happened has not yet taken its full shape, because grief is not immediate clarity. It is something that unfolds slowly, without structure, and yet, eventually, even that stillness begins to shift, because the instruction has been given. The path, however difficult, has been placed before him, and to remain where he is not to undo anything. It is only to remain within it. And so he moves, not with certainty, not with confidence, but because there is no alternative. The first labor is not presented to him as a test, but as something already decided, a creature not distant, not hidden in legend alone, but real, present, and already known. The Nemean Lion, a beast that cannot be killed by ordinary means. Its skin, impervious, its strength, beyond what men could overcome. And this matters because the task is not simply to defeat it, it is to face something that does not respond to what should work. Hercules travels, not quickly, but steadily, toward Nemea, toward a place that has already been shaped by the presence of the lion, because this is not an isolated threat. It has already altered the land around it. Villages abandoned, paths no longer used, a space defined by avoidance. And as he approaches, there is no dramatic arrival, no confrontation waiting immediately, only silence, the kind that follows something that has already taken control. He searches, not randomly, but with intention, tracking movement, following signs, until he finds it. The cave, deep, dark, with more than one entrance, and this detail becomes important because Hercules does not rush in. He observes, recognizes that if he enters without thought, the lion can escape and the task continues unresolved. So he prepares, not with weapons alone, but with understanding. He blocks one entrance, not quickly, not easily, but deliberately, moving stone, creating a boundary, reducing the possible paths, until there is only one. And then he enters. Inside, the space is narrow, confined, and the presence of the lion is immediate, not because it moves first, but because it is already there, already aware, and what follows is not a clean battle, not a structured fight, because the lion does not behave like an opponent. It does not retreat. It does not hesitate. It does not recognize the exchange. It acts directly, and Hercules must respond, not with distance, but with proximity. His weapons, at first, fail. The arrows do not penetrate. The blade does not cut, and this moment is critical because it reveals something essential, that strength alone is not enough when what you face does not respond to it. So he changes, not abandoning strength, but redirecting it. He closes the distance, moves into something more dangerous, more immediate, and in that closeness, he finds something else. Leverage, control, and the struggle becomes physical, direct, without separation, until finally the lion is overcome, not by weapon, but by force applied differently. And even then, the task is not complete, because to bring proof, he must remove the skin, and even that does not yield easily until he uses what the lion itself possessed, its own claw, to break what could not be broken. And when he leaves, he does not leave unchanged, because the lion does not remain behind. He wears it, the skin, not as trophy, but as something else. Protection, a reminder that what could not be overcome can become part of what allows you to continue. And this is only the first labor. The second does not wait long, because completion does not remove what comes next. It reveals it. The Hydra, a creature not defined by strength alone, but by regeneration. Multiple heads, and when one is removed, two return. And this changes everything, because now the problem is not defeat. It is multiplication. Hercules arrives at a place where the ground itself feels unstable. Marsh, mist, a space where visibility is reduced and movement is slower, because the Hydra does not exist in open terrain. It exists where things are unclear, where footing is uncertain. He begins, as before, with direct action, cuts, removes, and immediately the result becomes visible. Not reduction, but growth, more heads, more movement, more threat. And this moment requires something different, because repeating the same action produces a worse result. And this is where assistance enters, not to replace Hercules, but to support what must change. Iolaus, his companion, brings fire, and this is the shift, because now, after each strike, the wound is sealed, preventing return, preventing multiplication, and slowly, deliberately, the Hydra is reduced, not quickly, but through repetition, through adaptation, through the willingness to change approach. When the first one fails, and when it ends, the lesson remains that not all problems can be solved the same way. Even if strength is present, the third labor moves differently, not violent, not immediate, but prolonged. The Golden Hind, a creature not meant to be killed, but captured, alive, untouched. And this changes the pace entirely, because now the task is not force, but patience. He follows, tracks, not for days, but for a year, across terrain, across seasons, without forcing the moment, without breaking the condition. And this is perhaps the most difficult, because restraint over time is harder than force in a moment. And eventually, the capture happens, not through speed, not through dominance, but through persistence, through staying with something long enough for it to become possible. And with that, the first set of labors comes to a close, but not an end, because nothing has ended, only progressed. And what lies ahead does not become easier. And as Hercules moves forward, as the first labors settle behind him, there is no sense of completion, no moment where the path becomes easier, because each task, though finished, does not reduce what remains. It only reveals it. The next labor does not begin with a creature already known, but with something that moves across the land, unpredictable. The Erymanthian boar, a force not confined to a single place, but moving through it, disrupting, breaking, leaving behind signs of its passing, but never remaining long enough to be easily found. Hercules travels north toward the mountain, where the land begins to change, the air colder, the terrain more difficult, not open, but rising, uneven, covered in snow. And this matters because the boar does not exist in a place that can be approached directly. It must be followed, tracked, driven, not defeated immediately. And this changes the nature of the task, because this is not confrontation. It is pursuit. He moves through the mountain, not quickly, but steadily, watching the ground, reading signs, broken brush, disturbed snow, the shape of movement. That has already passed. And this takes time because the boar does not move in a straight line. It circles, doubles back, avoids being followed, and Hercules does not rush, because rushing would lose it entirely. Eventually, the moment comes, not in open terrain, but in a narrow space, where movement becomes limited, where direction can be controlled. And this is where Hercules shifts from following to guiding. He drives the boar, not by overpowering it, but by forcing it upward into deeper snow, where its movement slows, where its strength is no longer enough to escape. And in that slowing, in that reduction of movement, he closes the distance, not to strike, but to contain, to lift, to carry. And this is important because, once again, the labor is not destruction, but control. And when he brings the boar back, alive, contained, there is no celebration, only continuation, because the next task has already been placed before him. The Augean stables. At first, this does not appear to be a labor at all. No creature, no immediate danger, only a space, overwhelmed by accumulation, years of neglect, of waste, of something that has not been addressed. And this is different because now the problem is not something that can be struck, or captured. It is something that must be cleared, removed, changed entirely. Hercules arrives and sees not a single task, but something vast, layered, built up over time. And this is where many would fail, not because it is impossible, but because it does not offer a clear beginning. He does not begin immediately. He observes, steps back, looks at the structure, not only what is present, but what surrounds it. And this is where the shift occurs, because instead of entering, instead of attempting to remove what is already there, he looks beyond it to the rivers nearby, flowing, constant, unstopped. And this is the moment where the solution forms, not through effort, but through redirection. He alters the course of the rivers, not permanently, but enough to pass through the stables, to carry away what has accumulated for years in a single movement. And this is one of the most important labors, because it shows something new, that not all problems are solved by direct action. Some are solved by changing the system itself. And when it is done, the space is clear, not slowly, but completely. And yet, even here, the task is not fully accepted, because it was not done in the expected way. And this matters because it shows that even success can be questioned. The next labor returns to something more familiar, but not simpler. The Stymphalian birds, creatures that do not remain on the ground, but move above, sharp, metallic, able to strike from a distance. And this changes the approach again, because now the threat cannot be reached directly. Hercules arrives at the lake, dense, surrounded, difficult to navigate. The birds hidden, not visible at once, but present, watching, waiting. And once again, he does not rush, because rushing would expose him. Without result, he uses sound, movement, to drive them upward, to force them into visibility, into a space where they can be engaged. And this is where timing matters, because they do not remain in one place. They move quickly, unpredictably, and as they rise, he acts not wildly, but precisely, reducing their number, not eliminating all, but enough to shift the balance, to remove the threat that had held the area in place. And when it ends, there is a pattern, now clearer than before, because each labor is not the same, not even close. Each one requires something different. Strength, patience, observation, adaptation. And this is what allows him to continue. And yet, even with this understanding, what lies ahead does not become easier, only more demanding. And as Hercules continues, there is no sense that the labors are nearing an end, because each one, though completed, does not reduce what remains. It only changes the kind of difficulty that lies ahead. The next labor returns once more to something alive, but not contained. The Cretan bull, a creature not hidden, not distant, but known, already seen, already feared. Moving across the island of Crete, uncontrolled, uncontained, and Hercules travels, not quickly, but steadily, toward the island, toward a place where the land itself feels open, wide, but not calm, because the bull does not stay still. It moves across fields, across villages, leaving disruption behind it. And this changes the approach, because there is no single place to go, no cave, no fixed location, only movement. He follows, not directly, but by pattern, watching where it has been, understanding where it will go. And this takes time, because the bull does not move predictably. It reacts to sound, to presence, to anything that attempts to contain it. And when they meet, it is not sudden, it is not immediate conflict. There is distance, a space between them where recognition occurs. The bull charges, not with hesitation, but with force, and Hercules does not meet it head on, not immediately, because he understands that force against force will not end this quickly. He moves, avoids, redirects, lets the bull expend its energy again and again until movement begins to slow, until strength is no longer infinite. And this is where the moment changes, because now control becomes possible. He closes in, grips, holds, not striking, but containing, guiding, until the creature that could not be stopped is no longer moving freely. And once again, he does not destroy it. He brings it back alive, because the labor is not about ending something. It is about mastering it, and still the labors continue. The next does not begin with pursuit, but with something more difficult to understand. The mares of Diomedes, creatures not only dangerous, but unnatural, fed on flesh, driven by something beyond instinct. And Hercules arrives at a land that does not feel stable, because what lives there has already reshaped it. The mares, contained but not controlled, and Diomedes, their keeper, not separate from their nature, but part of it. And this is where the labor becomes layered, because the problem is not only the creatures, but what sustains them. Hercules does not act immediately. He observes, sees the pattern, the cycle, and understands that to change the creatures, he must change what feeds them. And so he turns first, not to the mares, but to Diomedes himself. What follows is not long, but it is decisive, because once Diomedes is removed, the structure that sustained the mares begins to break, and in that shift, the mares change, not completely, but enough to be led, to be contained, to be taken. And this labor more than others, reveals something darker, because it shows that some problems are not solved directly, but by removing what supports them. And still, the path continues. The next labor moves outward, far beyond what has come before. The cattle of Geryon, a task that is not near, not accessible, but distant, across land, across sea, to a place that requires travel, not just action. And this changes everything, because now the labor includes the journey itself. Hercules travels through lands that are not his own, across distances that stretch beyond a single path. And in this movement, there are moments, not always recorded, not always detailed, but present encounters, obstacles, shifts that extend the time before the task even begins. And when he arrives, Geryon is not simple, not singular, but multiple, a being of more than one form, more than one presence. And this requires something else, because now the confrontation is not straightforward. Hercules engages, not recklessly, but with focus, understanding that this is not a creature that can be approached without precision. And in time, through force, through persistence, through continuation, Geryon falls, and the cattle are taken. But even then, the labor is not complete, because returning is part of the task, and this extends everything further, because carrying something across distance is not simple. There are interruptions, delays, moments where what has been gained is nearly lost, and yet he continues. And this is what defines these labors now. Not strength, not singular victory, but continuation across time, across difficulty, across everything that attempts to interrupt it. And now, only a few remain, but they are not smaller, they are not easier, they are different, because what comes next does not remain in the world above. And as Hercules continues, there is no moment where the weight of what he carries becomes lighter because each labor does not remove the past. It exists alongside it. The next task does not begin with a creature, not immediately, but with distance. The apples of the Hesperides, not nearby, not within reach, but placed at the far edge of the world, guarded not only by beings, but by location itself. And this changes everything, because now the labor is not only action, it is time, movement, distance. Hercules begins to travel, not towards something he can see, but towards something he has only been told exists. And this is a different kind of effort, because moving toward the unknown requires continuation. Without confirmation, he crosses lands that shift gradually from familiar to unfamiliar, from structured to undefined. There are moments along this path where nothing happens, where the journey feels endless, unchanging. And this is part of the labor, because endurance is not only tested in action, but in repetition. Eventually, he reaches a place where the direction is no longer clear, where even the path begins to disappear. And this is where he encounters Atlas, a figure not defined by movement, but by stillness, holding the sky, not symbolically, but literally, bearing weight, without pause, without change. And Hercules, standing before him, sees something different, not an opponent, but a presence that understands burden. They speak, not quickly, but carefully, because neither moves, without purpose, and an agreement is made. Atlas will retrieve the apples because he can, because he knows the place, because he is already beyond the path. And Hercules will take his place for a moment, and this moment is one of the most important, because for the first time, Hercules does not move forward. He holds the weight that Atlas has carried, passes to him, and what follows is not action, it is stillness, a different kind of trial, because strength in motion is one thing, but strength without movement, without end, is something else entirely. Time passes, not marked, not counted, but felt. The weight does not lessen, it does not adjust, it remains. And Hercules does not resist it. He endures it until Atlas returns. And even then, there is hesitation, because Atlas, having been released, does not immediately take the burden back, and this moment requires something else, not strength, but thought. Hercules, once again, adapts. He asks Atlas to hold the sky just for a moment longer, so he can adjust. And when Atlas agrees, Hercules does not return. He takes the apples and leaves, and this is the labor, not only reaching the impossible, but understanding how to move through it. And still, one remains. The final labor does not exist. On the surface of the world, it lies below, Cerberus, a creature not guarding treasure, not guarding land, but guarding the boundary itself, the underworld. And this is not a place that can be entered freely. And yet, Hercules goes, not quickly, not forcefully, but deliberately. The path downward is not marked, but it is known. And as he descends, everything changes. The air, the sound, the sense of movement, because this is not a place where things live, it is where they remain. And Hercules moves through it, not as conqueror, but as presence, until he reaches Cerberus, three-headed, unmoving, not aggressive, but absolute. And this is the final test, because he has been given a condition. No weapons, only himself. And this changes everything, because now there is no distance, no separation, no tool, only contact. He approaches, not rushing, not forcing, but steady and Cerberus does not retreat, and when they meet, it is not battle, it is struggle, close, immediate, unbroken, and slowly, through strength, through endurance, through refusal to release, Cerberus is brought under control, not destroyed, not defeated, but held. And with that, the final labor is complete. And yet, nothing is restored, because the labors were never about returning. They were about enduring. And as Hercules returns, as the tasks end, as the structure that defined his path dissolves, what remains is not victory, but continuation.